Throughout history, it has been man's dream to travel to the stars. With the advancements of rocketry during the Cold War and space race of the 20th century, great leaps were taken to coming closer to this goal. Early rocketry started in China with the discovery of gunpowder. These early rockets were used for military purposes, but were inaccurate and not effective unless shot in large numbers. Nevertheless, rocketry spread to the west by the Silk Road. Rocketry continued to advance slowly until 1650. Kazimierz Siemienowicz created the first drawings of a staged rocket. This was an important idea that would later be used during the space race. Missile technology was gradually used again in wars throughout the 1800s, but rockets were not thought to be as effective as cannons or other guns. Rockets often only had an effective range of a few thousand feet, and that was it. During the late 19th century and early 20th century, great leaps forward were made by Russian scientist Konstantin Tsiolkovsky, who proposed the use of liquid propellants in rocketry. American Robert Goddard was the first to put this to the test when he launched the first liquid-propelled rocket in 1926. Their work eventually led to the creation of the V-2 rockets of Germany that were created by Wernher von Braun and his team of scientists. After the war, V-2 rockets were seized by Russian and American forces. Key scientists to the program were taken to the United States and the Soviet Union to work on creating new rockets. At this time, Wernher von Braun was brought with his colleagues to work for the United States military. The period after World War II saw an increase of tension between the U.S. and USSR. This eventually started the Cold War. The U.S. and USSR were the prominent contenders in this battle of ideology and culture. Each one wanted to outmatch their opponent in weaponry and technological advancement. Rocketry created a chance to compete in creation of delivery systems for the newly created nuclear weapons and also created a competition for ideologies. The race for better rockets really took off in 1957. The USSR launched the first satellite Sputnik 1 from an R-7 rocket. This rocket was designed by Korolev and featured a two-stage design which allowed the rocket to reach even greater heights. Stages of rockets refer to rocket engines that are stacked on top of each other. For example, a two-stage rocket would have a main rocket that is involved in the main launch, and also a bumper rocket for use afterwards. After the launch of the Soviet satellite, the U.S. responded with the creation of the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, or NASA for short. Early attempts of rocket launches include the Navy rocket Vanguard, which failed miserably. The early Navy and Air Force rockets that were created at this time all seemed to fail. Meanwhile, the USSR was claiming first by continuing their successful launches. The U.S. government turned to Wernher von Braun and his team that previously had not been allowed to help with the building of rockets. They acted to make him the first head of NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center, which was later renamed the Kennedy Space Center. From the design of the earlier V-2 rocket, he created the Redstone. He then modified the one-stage Redstone by adding two more stages. This greatly increased the effectiveness of the rocket. This new rocket was renamed the Jupiter-C. Von Braun then added an extra stage to the Jupiter-C to form the Juno 1, which was used to launch the first American satellite, Explorer 1, in 1958. After launching the first satellite, the race was on to launch the first man into space. The USSR continued to work on the Vostok capsule that would be launched from the R-7 type rocket. In the meantime, the U.S. started Project Mercury, which would bring the first Americans into space. During this time, the Mercury Redstone was created from earlier Redstone and Jupiter-C rockets. It went on to bring the first two Americans to space. In April of 1961, the USSR launched Vostok 1 with Yuri Gagarin on board. He became the first man to go into space and orbit the Earth. The U.S. responded by launching Alan Shepard a month later into suborbital space. After the first two Mercury missions, NASA started to use Atlas rockets to power their man-carrying missions to space. They proved to be more powerful than earlier designs and became the first intercontinental ballistic missile, or ICBMs. Also in 1961, Rocketdyne created the first F-1 rocket engine that would later be used for Apollo missions. During the early 1960s, the U.S. and USSR competed for multiple firsts in space and also continued to launch probes throughout the solar system. Almost all of these, however, crashed on entry to their destination. The first spacewalk was taken by Soviet Alexei Leonov and was followed shortly by American Edward White. With a speech by President John F. Kennedy in 1961, the race to the moon began and the Apollo project was officially kicked off.
I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal, before this decade is out, of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the earth. No single space project in this period will be more impressive to mankind or more important for the long-range exploration of space.
Congress also approved a massive raise in the NASA budget. In 1967, tests began for the Saturn V rockets for the Apollo missions. The Saturn V rocket was powered by 5 massive F-1 engines in the first stage, one F-1 engine for the second stage, and a smaller J-2 engine for the final stage. This allowed the Saturn V to put out more power than 65 Hoover dams during the launch. Meanwhile, the USSR worked on their Soyuz craft, which was still being launched from the R-7 rocket. History was made in 1969 when Neil Armstrong and Edwin Buzz Aldrin were the first men to walk on the moon. The Soviets tried to counter with the building of the N-1 rocket, but it was underfunded and was later abandoned by the Soviets. The U.S. made multiple other moon landings and landed on the moon for the last time in 1972. The Soviets never made it to the moon, and the space race effectively ended in 1975 with the Apollo-Soyuz mission, which linked the two rivals. The advancements in rocketry of this time period had profound marks on the future. The first ICBMs were created that could deliver nuclear weapons around the world. Also, the new understanding in rocketry helped aid jet aircraft development. By reaching space, many scientific advances were made as well. This includes the testing of the atmosphere, weather satellites, and also the testing of samples from the moon. Satellites that were launched by rockets also allowed for greater communication and also linked different people throughout the world. These communication satellites also linked people throughout the world via internet. Even though the rockets gave momentary glory to the winning country, it created an even longer lasting effect on the world. It inspired millions of people around the world. Here is a clip of Buzz Aldrin explaining the impact of the Apollo 11 mission.
Apollo 11 was about exploration, about taking risks for great rewards in science and engineering, about setting an ambitious goal before the world, and then finding the political will and the national means to achieve it. Indelibly impressed upon our nation's memory, the voyage of Apollo still seems incredible. We are inspired by the magnitude and teaming efforts of people from all walks of life, from industries big and small, who worked in tandem to attain a long-term goal of magnificent achievement.